Jamila, what's up?
What's up? So I decided to join in. I normally am no rebel. It tries not to do
I know.
too much fun. I was sitting and I watched part of it and I was like, let me go get my vest.
Yes. Thank you.
I got the hoop earrings.
Yes, the hoop earrings. All right.
I actually bought this when I was 12 years old in Ghana.
Really?
So this is not real 90s because real 90s was a whole lot of bootleg African print.
No, but that's authentic.
This is not bootleg.
That's the real stuff. That's even better.
I can't close it because I bought it a long time ago. But I got it.
That's what just happened.
My 90s. I have my Howard.
Whoop, whoop.
My Howard bubble letter sweatshirt that they gave me when I went to college. So that's 97 and early 90s. So
yeah. Tell us what you were up to in the 90s.
What was I up to in the 90s? Let's see. 90s, I'm a 90s baby, so I was definitely listening to music and dancing and all of that. But in 97,
you were not a 90s baby. You were not born in the 90s.
I'm a 70s baby.
I was going to say, wait a minute.
But I'm a 90s baby when it comes to music.
Right.
So I'm an adult. What is that? Yes. Like a 90s adult?
Yes. You were name of your, what is it? That coming of age in the 90s.
Yes, I was coming of age in the 90s.
Right.
All types of stuff. Dancing to death.
90s was definitely the best era for hip hop.
I was probably upside down against the wall at the West Indian Social Club on Main Street.
That's a Hartford reference. That's for all your Hartford folks.
Right.
We know what that means.
Right. So, yes, there's Black people in Connecticut, y'all.
Oh my gosh, that conversation.
But we won't go there. But yeah, so 90s, I think my favorite part of talking about the 90s, besides the music and all of that, was going to Howard. So that's when I moved to DC and been here ever since. Went to Howard. It was, folks think going to a Black college makes you more militant and actually made me much more friendly and tolerable of white people.
Okay.
Because I went to school I went to New England private schools and I was like surrounded by all the elitist stuff. It's actually interesting because some of my language journey was based on stuff I experienced at those private schools. But yeah, so it was a space where I got to feel more comfortable in my skin.
Yeah.
And I appreciated the tone of my skin, like who I am. I found out there was actually rich Black people in the world, which I didn't realize until late 90s.
You wouldn't know that from Connecticut, coming from Connecticut.
I was like, you're calling your dad for spending cash to go shopping? I'm trying to get food.
Right.
But okay.
Right.
But yeah, I was at Howard. I was partying in the Mecca.
Love it. So tell the folks who you are, what you do.
All right. So I like to call myself a multilingual freedom fighter.
I just love that personally.
That's my thing. I had to sit in it. At first, I thought it sounded too big because I'm like, okay, you haven't freed anybody from like the Underground Railroad, but language is liberation for me, right? And I really think it's liberation for everyone. And so I'm trying to get folks to hop on that language and liberation train. So I started similar to kind of what you do. I work both in the consultancy for organizations that are integrating language justice into their day-to-day practices, but then also with individuals who are looking to actually learn a language. It sounds cliche, but I want people to actually want to do something with the language because I know so many folks are, I really want to do that. And then 5 years later, they're like, I've been on Duolingo for 3 years and I don't feel comfortable talking to anybody. So I try to help folks really progress in their language journey and get some accountability.
I love that. But you, by training, you're a lawyer. Like you went to law school. By training,
I am an attorney. Yes. So I've worked with nonprofits for a public interest attorney. So a lot of the freedom fighter part and the language part came because in everything that I did working legally, and that's you first met me when I was in law school. That's right. When I was a legal.
Oh yeah, we go way back.
Way back. Way back. So everything that a lot of times my clients, people that I work with, a lot of times I've been with Spanish speakers.
Right.
Or I have to work in a situation where it's immigrant advocacy. We're doing immigrant rights. We're doing, poverty clinics, getting your unemployment benefits, those kinds of things. But the communities of people don't all speak one language, and they needed someone who could speak more than one language. So a lot of the opportunities I got, even on the legal side, had more to do with the fact that I could speak to people in more than one language than it did with my legal knowledge. Because there's a lot of people who can help you file your unemployment benefits.
Right.
Can they
but
talk
not,
to you in Amharic?
Not to do that in multiple languages.
Right, but can they do it in Amharic? You know what I mean? Not that I can, not yet, but but
Right.
So can I do a little tester with your folks who are on?
For sure.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna do a little test. I see. I'm following the chats. I know there's a lag on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay. Yo hablo español. Este es mi lenguaje profesional. Trabajo como intérprete, traductora y también entrenadora de idiomas, abogada también. Si me entiendes, escribe sí en Facebook.
Okay, great. I love that. So
Okay.
I'm watching both feeds.
Okay, I'm going to go through
page.
I'm going to go through two more. It'll take 2
Okay.
seconds. Eu falo um pouco português porque semelhante ao espanhol. Verdade, entendo mais que eu falo. Se você me entende, digite sim no Facebook. And the last one, we're not going to wait for the lag. Je parle un peu français aussi. Je pratique mon français plus que les autres langues car je parle de façon conversationnelle et j'ai besoin de m'améliorer avec le français parce que c'est pas professionnel maintenant. Si vous me comprenez, tapez oui sur Facebook.
Love it. So we're getting some C's. We're getting some C's.
Okay. All right, I see some C's. And so basically, I just said in Spanish, Portuguese, and French a little bit, like I speak these languages. If you can understand me, tap yes in Facebook. But that is kind of part of like the base level. If I'm working with the client, I'm like, have you asked the people that you're talking to what language they speak? Whether it's native or not. It doesn't have to be a native language. It could just be whether they learned it. If you don't know what language they speak, then you're missing an opportunity to communicate and connect with them.
My mom is saying, ahora estoy celosa.
Ah, ¿por qué? No te pongas celosa, no te pongas celosa.
So then my mom is saying that she's now she's jealous. my mom, my mother speaks Spanish. So I love that. And people are, fire, and that was beautiful, and all of the things.
I see a we.
Yes. Awesome. So the reason that I wanted you to come on and celebrate, and you have a podcast, we'll be recording your podcast episode soon, and it'll be up in the feed. So people go and subscribe to Business Remixed so that when all of these fabulous guests episodes are up, they will automatically come into your feed, and you can hear Jamila show off a little bit more of her language skills. But tell us why, business owners need to be thinking about just a little bit more about why they need to be thinking about language accessibility.
Okay.
Maybe speak into the fear, that fear that you talk about sometimes.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's not so much it's a pragmatic thing. And in addition to being pragmatic, it's not so much about access as it is about, particularly if you're talking impact. If you're trying to impact people in one language, you're missing people, right? So if you have an impact-focused business, and your impact-focused business is exclusively in English, and the thing is, there are bilingual people who have impact-focused businesses, and they don't talk or speak in the other languages that they themselves speak.
You don't need to talk about me like that in my face, Jamila.
No. No. But I mean, it happens. It happens with me too, right? So there's people think about language, they think about it, I need to learn a language, which is a thing, because I talk about multilingual community building. It's not about just interpreting and translation. It's about making connections with people. People connect to people in their native language in a different way than they connect to you in another language. I could cuss somebody out in Spanish. It just feels better if I do it in English. Right. So you connect emotionally.
Yeah.
It's based on your past experiences, all of that. So businesses, when they bring that into their space, and not just businesses, but nonprofits, mission driven. I always say I work with mission driven organizations and freedom fighters. So whether you're for profit, for purpose, if your goal is to create change, there's just no way to truly do that on a broad level if you're doing it in one language.
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit? I remember being at your house a couple years back and talking to you and having my mind blown when you were like, and I can't now remember the word that you used, but you were talking about like, it's not just about like translating the words. It's about translating the context and like this cultural, like the cultural context.
So I gave my Howard shout out. Like when I trained as a simultaneous interpreter at Howard, and I had a Cuban professor, and he said to us, you can't just be bilingual, you have to be bicultural. Right? Because language is culture. Part of the reason why I did what I do is because I didn't see myself in it. So if you could say you good in English in 5 different ways, as like I think about Black culture a lot in it. A lot of what I do is very Black centric. But if the interpreter listening to it can't catch the tone of you good, nah, you good. All right, nah, I'm good.
You good doesn't mean just are you good.
You might not be good, and I might be about to punch you in your face, but you don't know that.
Right.
You know what I mean? But then it's also, that's like the funny haha meme thing that people, but then it's also really real in terms of just cultural context. If you talk about all of these social justice all this social justice terminology, I, as a lesbian, I work in the LGBT community a lot. So LGBT terminology is very English centric, and some of it doesn't make sense when you start to translate it. Or something simple like mansplaining. Like people talk about mansplaining.
Exactly.
Right? In Spanish, the made up new term is macho explicación. Right? Which is a new word, and a lot of people in Spanish would never have heard it. Just like you have to explain mansplaining to people, you have to explain macho explicación, but it makes sense once you explain it, because
it's not a literal context. Right. For those people who don't know, macho explicación is not a literal translation of mansplaining. The words aren't the same.
Right. So if you talk to someone in Spanish about machismo,
right,
they understand what that means. So if I said hombre explicando, it's like, huh?
What are you talking about?
Right. It wouldn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a thing. So I do a lot of work with people around, there's a need to create language in a multilingual way.
Yeah.
Because we're constantly creating language when it comes to social justice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And can you talk about, even though I'm not 100% on board with this, but like, can you talk about the fact that you really don't have a superpower for language?
I don't. I really don't. I promise you I don't. Right? So this is a thing, and I love my superpower is that I think it's fun, right? People, and I'm a pleasure seeker. I like to do things that I enjoy, right? That's why I enjoy this work. That's why I'm not at a corporate law firm somewhere, because I wouldn't enjoy it. So if you enjoy something...
People are saying, yes, you do have a superpower.
If you enjoy something, you practice it. When you do something a lot, you get good at it, period. So I will twiddle around on apps and things like that. And I enjoy it and I practice it. But what I discovered, and I think this is, if I were to say the distinction, is I started to look at a system that you can switch up. One of your previous folks talked about people having like, this is the way, and you do this way, you follow I'm like, nah, like it's gonna work differently for different people, but everyone still needs a roadmap. They need something to follow. Otherwise they end up being like, oh, I tried to do this for 5 years and I couldn't. Right. So I started figuring out how to develop systems for myself. And then as I talked to people, I saw the different types of systems and processes that worked well for other people, and started making it more personalized and customized. So how can I make it fun for you to practice?
Right.
And then how can I give you something that's leading you to success as opposed to just twiddling your thumbs?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
And I don't have a superpower. I promise you I don't. Okay. I won't talk too much. I wasn't. This is the facts that I don't have a superpower. I spent 15 minutes in Argentina asking for sopa to lavar mi ropa. Okay.
Right.
So for folks who don't speak Spanish, sopa probably sounds like it means soup to you.
Right.
I mean, no, sorry. It probably sounds like it means
like it means soap. Right.
But it's soup. Right?
Right.
So I'm like, I need to wash my clothes. Like, necesito sopa para lavar mi ropa. And she's like, sopa? And I'm like, yeah, I don't.
Right.
Yeah, like, necesito tengo pantalón, tengo. And she's just like, ay, chica, jabón. And everybody starts cracking up, laughing at me, right? But I can't forget how to say jabón ever in my life. Because I spent 15 minutes calling soap soup.
Right.
So I don't have a superpower.
That happened to me. It didn't happen to me, but I witnessed this I'll never forget this. We had someone working as like a intern in the last place that I worked a couple years back, and our old the guy who the maintenance keeper came into the space, and he was trying to explain that the people who had rented the studio had left balloons had left balloons in the ceiling. And so he's like pointing up and talking about how like these balloons were left in the ceiling.
I know where this is going.
The guy the intern who spoke Spanish, but like a different, he was a white dude, but he knew Spanish. But he's hearing this man say that they left bombas like on the ceiling, and he's looking like they left bombas in the ceiling. And so like bomba, he's thinking bomb. He's like they left bombs in the ceiling, whereas Pedro is talking about like the balloons that they left in the ceiling. And it was it's just so funny. Yeah. But if you don't understand like the context, like the cultural context and like the words that people use, like even within one language, like just the words will be different.
Yeah. And it is funny, that makes me think about accent shaming, because there's not a lot of native English speakers that are Black, like African American. I say Black from the United States, but I don't like the American, but like a Black person from the United States who grew up speaking English in the language space, right? In a really like serious way. Yeah. And so one of the things that the accent shaming of it, because we get accent shamed in our native language, right? Yeah. So in one second. And then when you're trying to learn a language, and I do it to myself, I always try to learn the right accent to say it the right way. But when you said bomba, I had a conversation with one of my Latino brothers, and he was talking about how he doesn't say the word beach in English because his accent makes it sound like something else. Right. Right. Never learning Spanish, I would never say the word comb, because if you take out one vowel, it turns into another word. So for the folks who don't speak Spanish, the difference of one vowel turns comb into male private parts. Right. So if you say it so I talk to people about the difference between communication and accent shaming. Are you trying to be heard and understood, or are you trying to sound perfect? Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's, and I'll share this. That is a big hang up, like the accent sharing, or like for me, one of the things that has always been really difficult is like language dominance and not feeling like I can communicate in the at the register, the formal register, that I can communicate in English in Spanish. So I speak Spanish, I can have a conversation, I understand everything, but I can't do not that I am unable in this moment to do my work at the level that I can do it in English and Spanish. And that's a huge like psychological barrier for me from even just like speaking Spanish. And I'm seeing in the comments that's a feeling that other people have. It's like that's part of the reason why they're afraid to like pick up another, like to try to learn another language, because of how they're going to sound or people making fun.
That happens. My daughter, good, I think here.
Nope.
You're pausing. I hear you.
Oh, okay. You're good.
Okay, I got you.
What were you saying about your daughter?
No, similar, because so my daughter is second generation Afro-Colombiana. Her father born and raised in Colombia. And she can speak to me in Spanish, understands me in Spanish, but she frequently I will speak to her in Spanish and she will respond to me in English because she has a 12-year-old, actually she probably has more like a 15-year-old vocabulary in English. She's very advanced vocabulary-wise. But trying to tell someone, no, I want you to try to speak like a 6-year-old.
Right.
You can speak like a 15. Why wouldn't you choose the one that you can, you feel better in?
Right.
And the only way to get past that is just to do it, right? And also to take it out of yourself. Like I'm like, you can't talk to your grandma because she can't communicate with you. So if you don't speak to her in Spanish, and there are people who need information, like there's stuff going on with healthcare, there's knowledge, there's somebody somewhere that has everything they need in their house to start a business.
Right.
And could impact their entire community within the course of a month, but they need information from someone in a language other than English in order to have the knowledge to make it happen.
Right.
So like when you start thinking about it from, I can impact people who need me in a different way, then like, it doesn't really matter if you're perfect at it or not.
Right. Right. And like we were saying yesterday, in our mastermind, Jamila's in the Amplified Impact Mastermind, so we get to see.
It's dope.
So yesterday we were talking about this, and I was like, "Oh yeah, we don't even speak English in like perfect syntax, like grammar."
I absolutely don't.
Right? Like, and I was sharing how my fiance Tito, who is wonderful, but he often will poke fun at me because I'll do things like I'll open the refrigerator and I'll be like, we ain't got no ketchup.
Mm-hmm.
Ain't got no is probably one of my most common, like, things that I say. Mm-hmm. We ain't got no ketchup. And he'd be like, really? Even be like,
yeah.
Really? Don't you have a master's degree? Really? We ain't got no, is that how you write your paper? No, of course I don't write my papers like that. Of course I'm not getting on like making a formal presentation and speaking like that. I can register my dialect based on like who I'm talking to. It's right. Like,
Yep. But if you are
forgiving, we're not that forgiving of ourselves when we're learning another language.
But if you're a community organizer and you're knocking doors, it might actually be more off-putting to someone if you're like, hello, how could I would like to talk to you today.
Yes.
We have an important initiative that we would like to discuss. And I believe that it's essential that they'll just kind of
like, who are you, the feds?
Right. So it's like, there's a thing. I remember folks telling me that I spoke Spanish like a Spanish teacher, right? Like, you can't be like, I ain't like, okay. Right. You know what I mean? Like, so there's a power to that, to that code switching. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I love seeing people unlock is like seeing how valuable it is that you can actually switch that on and not sound fake. Right. And that you can do both and it's authentic and it's real to who you are.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
People love this. Rolling up like the Coco. Yes, rolling up like the Coco.
Girl, I had to relearn Spanish when I went to the DR because for about 3 weeks I was like, huh? Yeah. And I was like, okay.
When I go to Dominican Republic, when I go to DR, I have to really lean in and be like,
I was like, because it's the same thing we do in English. It made me realize, I was like, yo, if some of my friends who only speak Spanish or Portuguese or French who are learning English were to hop in on some conversation with my friends, I was like, oh God, they wouldn't know nothing we said. They were like, that's not English.
Right. Doesn't make any sense.
You know
that don't make no sense.
That's not is.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's funny.
Jamila, thank you so much for coming on and having this conversation, this fun conversation. Tell folks where to find you on Instagram.
You can find me on Instagram at Jamii Linguists. It's JAM as in mansplaining. I _ linguists with an S, Jamii Linguists. And actually, so we have a lot of fun stuff coming out. Check it out. I have a Spanish program launching soon. So
Yeah, you have a lot of fun stuff coming down the pipe.
So it should be cool.
And also you are able to support people. You do support people in not just building their own language acquisition, but like looking at their businesses and finding opportunities to make things more language accessible.
Yes, if you're interested in managing and operating a multilingual business and boosting your multilingual capacity, I got you.
Great. All right, Jamila, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Subscribe to the podcast so you get her episode when it comes out in a few weeks. See you soon.